Katie's been a master gardener for
Since '09.
'09, so 11 years. So, and she's our go-to woman for vegetables. She's been at the food bank. She was working at the food bank as well, but she also was employed by me as an assistant to our master gardener program. And so this is a picture of the food bank garden, and she'll talk about it. But she's responsible for a lot of what's going on here at the food bank. So Katie, take it away.
All right. So here's another picture of the food bank. It is a demonstration garden, and it's a certified teaching garden. We accept volunteers down there, and it's open to the public. It's right next to the river walk. There's 23 raised beds. There's a cistern and rain garden, small compost area, butterfly garden. There's a lot in a small area. But the master gardeners do a great job supporting it, and the food bank does an excellent job with trying to do the upkeep on that. So the first garden bed was put in '10, the spring of '10, and we average about 1,000 to 1,500 pounds of vegetables a year, and all the harvest goes up to the emergency food box area. So many of the pictures were for the presentation were taken from growing. And that actually behind you there is a fall garden. Good deal. So fall vegetables, it covers all the greens and the roots. And around this area, they're all fall cold hardy. You don't have to worry about a freeze. And actually most of the greens taste better after a freeze. Your collard, sweetened, the mustard and chard, everything just kind of tastes better after the freeze. So you don't really have to worry about it. Even your root vegetables, they will not freeze, because we generally, on a frost or on a very cold day, we only get a 1/2 inch ground frozen, just barely on the top with the frost. So no need to worry about trying to cover everything up and those kinds of things. A lot of stuff at the food bank garden get covered up, but we have deer that come in and sample. So that's why we have a lot of stuff covered there. If you're going to do root vegetables, the typical ones here are radish, carrots, beets, rutabagas, and turnips. And they like to be direct sown. So once you put them in the ground, don't try to move them. If you thin them out, don't try to pull up the little tiny thin ones out and move them someplace else. You just dig a little trench with your trowel, sprinkle the seeds in, cover them over and pat them down. And then you kind of wait till they're up, 3 or 4 inches and have true leaves, and then you can thin them out according to the back of the package. If it has rained well, you can gently pull them out, but if not, just get a little scissors and snip them off. So all your root vegetables should be sown directly in ground. Radishes, these are little cherry bells, and the cherry bells probably do better in the spring when the ground goes from cool to warmer. The French breakfast and the white icicle probably do better in the fall, and those are the longer ones. These again are cherry bell, but the cherry bell comes in a variety of colors and shapes and sizes. There's champion, there's the smaller ones. There's so many different types of variety. But the French breakfast are the longer red ones with the white on them, and the white tip, and then the white icicles are just the longer skinny white radish, and they seem to finish off better in the cool. So they go good from warm to cool, and you can put them in now, but probably even if you wait towards the end of September, you could harvest them in November. They generally only take, the longer ones obviously take a little bit longer, but the small ones generally only take about a month. And also the leaves are edible on those, and they're bitter like a green. Carrots, all kinds of different kinds of carrots. The shorter ones do better here simply because we have harder soil with lots of clay. And if you have a raised bed with some very nice soil in it, you could go for a longer 12-inch carrot. And typical around here, what you'll get at the stores are Danvers, but you can get Danvers half long, and they're closer to 7-inch. There's another brand that I like to use are Nantes, Nates, I believe the spelling. And they have a smaller core in the middle and a rounder tip on the end, not so much a taper. It's kind of like the one up there at 12 o'clock on that slide. But you can buy one of these rainbow packs if you've got nice soil. They really make a beautiful carrot salad when you use all kinds of different ones. But here's some of my mistakes. You really need to thin the carrots according to what's on the back. Now, I thought I had these thinned out, and obviously I didn't. So if you don't thin them, they really do just love each other and give each other a great big hug. And then they'll just be twisted. I mean, they're fine. And usually carrots, you grow, the peel is so thin on them, you don't have to, take the peel off of them. So you can cook them this way as long as you can soak most of the dirt off of them. But just read the back of the package on those things. And also the carrot greens are edible. I generally like to use the smaller ones inside, not the big tougher outside ones. But the smaller ones inside just kind of taste like a green carrot. So you can chop them up and throw them in your salad. And I do know people that put them often in shakes. If the growing tip on a carrot hits a rock, or this I think is like a hard piece of mulch that was in our bed, it will split. It usually just splits in two pieces. So you have two carrots growing down. It's often called carrots with pants. So it just looks like a little pair of blue jeans. So the tip will split, and then you end up with multiple roots on it. They still taste good, taste the same. It doesn't affect the taste on it, just the growing. You can easily do a dual planting of carrots and radishes. The radishes, like I said, are fast growing, usually done within a month. These were planted at the same time. So by the time the greens are up for the carrots in a month, you just start pulling the radishes out, because once the greens come up, they will flop over and shade the radishes, and then the radishes wouldn't get enough sun to grow. So plant them both at the same time, and then you will just harvest your radishes in between your rows, and then your carrot greens will get bigger, taller, and you won't have to worry about them shading. But that's an easy dual planting. And the radishes, you can actually plug those in along any of the edges of the beds in spring or fall. But you just have to, like if you're doing cabbage, you would definitely have to get them in while the cabbage is small, because those bottom leaves on the cabbage end up large. Like I said, they're very fast. They're often grown in a kid's garden because they are quick. Beets, another one of the root vegetables, and you can harvest beets when they're small if you like the smaller sweet ones. If you're gonna maybe pickle them or something like that, you don't have to let them get as large as what they get in the store. The beet seeds and the chard are in the same family, and you'll notice some other chard, ruby chard and things look exactly like the beet greens. Their seeds are very hard, so the seed coats are hard. So you might want to soak them overnight. Usually the back of the package will tell you to do that. You don't have to. If the ground is really wet, like what it is now, you can just direct sow those. All it does is soften that seed coat up enough to help germinate faster. When it's time to thin out the beets, just snip off the leaves right close to the ground with a pair of scissors, and then you can use those little tiny beet greens in your salad. So the beet root needs plenty of room to develop, so you don't really want to crowd them or bunch them together. They won't twist like carrots. They just won't get big at all. So just again, I know a lot of people don't, but it's just so important to read the back of the seed packets and follow those directions on all of those on how to thin them. But when you thin out carrots and your beets, even when, you may thin them the first time and then you wait another 2 or 3 weeks and thin again, but just save all those greens each time you thin. I mean, you bought that seed pack, you might as well use them. Turnips. Turnips grow here very easily, and I know a lot of people will grow the turnip root and then harvest some of the greens as well from there. You just have to be careful only to do 1 or 2 leaves from each turnip root. You need all the greens on the top to for enough photosynthesis to develop the root itself. The most common turnip root around here is called purple top. And you can see on that picture that it definitely has a purple top on it. And often that little part of the purple top, like on a carrot or radish, bumps up above the top of the soil. So probably has a lot to do with the sun hitting that area. There are completely white turnips as well. The one that is most common around here is purple top. And the most common turnip green is called 7 top. And I just remember that because I always tell myself that I can clip that 7 times. I've never counted, but that's how I remember 7 top and purple top. I'm a little dyslexic with some of those things, so I have to come up with little tricks to remember which seed packets I have. So if you want to take leaves from any of the root plants to use as greens, I'll only take several from each. That's what I was talking about. It goes with beets and turnips and obviously carrots. These are rutabagas, and rutabagas do well here. I have grown them often at the garden. They're bigger than a turnip. So it's actually a cross between a turnip and a cabbage. They're larger than a turnip, but they're a little more milder, so they have more of a, more with the cabbage. The leaves are edible and they're smoother like a cabbage leaf. You know, the turnip greens kind of are itchy at times. It's not splintery, but they're rougher. But the turnip leaves and the rutabaga leaves are both obviously edible, but the rutabaga is closer to a cabbage. So when you fertilize for root vegetables, the first number in there is for nitrogen, and nitrogen is for the green leaves on the plants. So if you're trying to get a bigger root, you want to use a 5-10-10 as opposed to a 10-10-10 is a general fertilizer, but if you really want to encourage the roots, use a 5-10-10, especially if your plants are already up for a while and you have good sized leaves on them. Don't do this right as they're seedlings. You don't want to burn them. You can actually put this fertilizer in maybe a week before you plant, so it's already in the soil. But if you didn't do that, you can easily do 5-10-10 after the seedlings are already up in pretty good size. I would say let them be up, 8-10 inches, and then you can go ahead and do a root fertilizer on them. So if you're going to start bigger plants such as cabbage or some head lettuce, there are different types of lettuce. There's leaf lettuce and there's head lettuce. So the leaf lettuce you direct sow, but the head lettuce you can start in little seed trays. You can start your kale, collards, chard in these. And then when these little seedlings get up to a certain, true leaves, and they're about 3 inches up in these little seed trays, the blue one is just a mushroom container, and the other one is just a strawberry container. You don't have to have special kinds of trays. You just want ones deep enough. And I already have seeds in that bib lettuce one. Those are the little tiny white flakes in there. They're very hard to see, so make sure you have labels ready. I left some of those seeds out on top of the bib lettuce label there. That's actually cut up Venetian blind. But that's how small those lettuce seeds are. And there's some collard seeds up there on the top. But make sure you have labels ready, because everything in that collards, kale, broccoli, mustard, that's all in the brassica family, and they all look exactly alike. The seedlings look exactly alike. So once they sprout up, not unless you've only done broccoli and nothing else, you will not know that that's broccoli, because the broccoli looks exactly as the cabbage and the collards and the kale. The seedlings all look exactly the same. So make sure you have some sort of label. You can even use the plastic fork or spoon or knife and write with a Sharpie on it. That would work. So if you're doing the bigger plants like that, you can start those from seeds, but it is just as easy to go to the hardware store to buy them. But if you want to do the whole process, go ahead and start those seedlings now. Then once they get big enough in here, you can transplant them to a little cup or a pot, something along that size. And then when they're bigger and maybe it's not so hot outside, then you can go from there and stick them directly in the ground. So like I said, that was a strawberry container and a mushroom container. So you want them at least 3 inches deep so the roots have enough room to grow down. Some of the little seedlings have amazing long roots on them. Just make sure you have some drain holes in the bottom. The strawberry container has too many drain holes, so I put in a little paper towel in the bottom of that. Cabbage is one of the bigger plants. You can really do need to thin that out. In my 4 by 8 beds down at the garden, I generally only get 3 across in a 4-foot bed. So really, you feel strange putting only 3 in a 4-foot area because the plants are so small, but those bottom leaves on that get to be enormous. Main problem with everybody that grows cabbage is the cabbage slopper. There's a brown moth, and that lays its eggs directly on the plant. And as the caterpillar grows, it just will eat your plant. And if you notice some holes like that, start looking underneath the leaves or around in there. And you can, if you only have a couple plants, you can just pull off the little caterpillar. But I mean, if you have a lot of them, you can spray with the BT. BT is an organic natural substance, and your sprays will be marked with BT for all caterpillar. The cabbage sloppers also like broccoli and kale and other members of that brassica family. There is another nasty one, the cabbage butterfly, and this one is often pretty much in the spring. So the moth has more like a little inchworm kind of guy. They're both the same color, and they're very hard to see, the caterpillars. They're the same color as the cabbage. They're not easy to see. This one is just a little bit flatter, so it doesn't inch up like an inchworm. But man, they get inside your cabbage, and yeah, this one has a lot of damage. Usually the ones that, I mean, I check our plants down at the garden, and so you can spray. But with BT, you would have to spray preemptively, and then it works killing the caterpillar. They have to actually munch on the leaves that have the BT on them. So sometimes it takes a couple days. It will kill them, and it will slow them down. But yeah, this one is really ugly. Hopefully yours won't get that bad, because actually homegrown cabbage tastes completely different than what's in the store. It's much, much sweeter. Broccoli's in that same family. When you eat broccoli, you're actually eating the flower. So don't let it turn yellow, because that's when it's gone too far and it's getting ready to go to seed. So when you clip off your broccoli stalks, save all of that part, because the stalks are edible and the leaves are edible. The broccoli leaves themselves are edible. Obviously, smaller ones are more taste, but you can cook them up like cooked cabbage or cook any type of cooked greens. Again, they're all in the same family. The stalks, if you don't do anything else, I mean, a lot of the upper parts of those stalks are quite tender. People use them for coleslaw, but even the bottom part of those stalks, you can peel off the outside skin of those peelings and use the inside, or you can save them. And I save a lot of those stalks of like celery and leaves and all of these other bigger vegetable parts. I put them in a bag in the freezer, and then when I have a little Ziploc bag full of leftover scraps that you were going to throw away, like the bottoms of onions or the tops of onions, store all that stuff, and then you can just make soup stock with it. So just save all those parts. So you bought that plant, you bought the seed, and you took the time to grow it. So use every inch of that plant. If you harvest your larger flower and you leave your plant there, you will get these little florets that come off the main stalk, and you will probably get enough for another serving in there. So if you're growing 2 or 3 broccoli for your little home garden, just after you use the first one, if you still have time to let it sit there, just let it sit there. It'll grow more. You might have to just give it a little dose of fertilizer, and then go from there. And again, on something that flowers like that, you want to use a 5-10-10. You're not really looking for just a huge plant with no flower. You want to use something that will encourage flower growth. On your cabbage, you can use something that's all leaves. You can use it 10-10-10, or even like a fish emulsion that is 5-1-1. So something with a bigger first number. Your first number is for your greens. When you're going to harvest, if you've got a lot of the greens, when it's time to harvest those, just clip off the outer bigger leaves. You should see some later on that I have clipped off on collards or chard. I just start on the outer leaves. You want to leave the middle part of the plant is where the growing tip is. So harvest the outside growing leaves. Sometimes in the store you'll see pretty much like collard greens in a big bunch where they've just cut the whole plant down. They let the plant get big and then they'll just cut the whole plant down and then put a tie band or something or rubber band around the whole plant. Well, I don't know where that went. I didn't touch it. Let me get back up there. All right. Are we back on the correct one? Does everybody see the correct one? All right. Yeah, I don't know. Some note came through. So if you have your plant at home, just do the outside leaves on it. A 10-10-10 for all your greens, or a 5-1-1. Then when you start your plants like collard and kale from the seed trap, you do those in seeds or you buy those. And then you direct sow your mustard greens and your leaf lettuce and your turnip greens. They're much easier to start just from. There's what I was talking about in the store. They've pretty much harvested the whole plant from there. So this is just 2 collard greens in a 5-gallon bucket. They do get to be rather large. This is a grow bucket. So again, if you crowd your plants, you won't get the nice big greens. You can crowd them. I'll show you a picture of some mustard greens that are kind of crowded. But if you space your collards out, then you get these really nice big leaves. If you crowd them together, they grow to the size of the container. And if the plants themselves are crowded together. If you crowd your cabbages, you get little tiny heads of cabbage, which might be fine for your home garden. But if you want a nice big head of cabbage, it only grows to the size that it can get. It needs to be spaced out to get that bigger head. Same thing with collards. If you crowd them together, you won't get the nice bigger leaves. You'll just have little tiny plants. This is rainbow chard or neon or bright lights. Any of those labels, you'll get multicolored chard in there. You can see at the bottom of this orange one up front where I've clipped off the bottom leaves. If you like chard, again, it's in the same family as the beet. You can see the leaves are similar. You can put this in a container on the deck or even on the front porch. The rainbow stuff is actually a gorgeous container plant. But it does well. It doesn't hold up to the really cold freezes, the hard freezes in Chattanooga as well as the white does. I think it's called North Fork, something along those lines. And it's just the white chard. And the white chard has a bigger base to it, stem to it, and the stems to the leaves are fatter. And that just seems to hold up better to the cold. This has a cloth cover on it in the background, but it doesn't have anything to do for weather. So you don't really have to cover these. And I've had problems covering them when we had a big snow because the snow just sat on top of those covers and smushed the plants. If the plants like your mustard and collards and even your small head lettuce and if they have enough air around them in the cold, they sort of look droopy for a day while it's really cold. And then once it gets back up into the 40s or 50s, the plant stands upright again. If they're too crowded and the leaves will smush together when it freezes, that's when you have more problems. They kind of freeze together. But if there's enough room around them that it seems to insulate, the cold air seems to insulate the plant itself somehow. But the white is more cold hardy. It's just not nearly as pretty as the rainbow. This is Siberian kale. It's probably the more common one. So I would have already harvested this probably 3 or 4 times. There is a dwarf blue Siberian kale. It's called blue just because it gets a little bluish tint. You can see that bottom leaves have that blue-gray to them on. But the Siberian kale is the one that's so popular now for kale chips. There's lots of different kinds of kale. There's red Russian, which I have in here too. The dwarf is easier to manage. So if you have a smaller area, I would look for dwarf Siberian kale. The lacinato, the dinosaur kale, that's a more upright kind of plant, as opposed to these being long, spread out. The dinosaur kale kind of stands up, and it's a dark leaf, and it's called dinosaur kale because the leaf itself is kind of bumpy, so they say it looks like dinosaur skin. So, but that's it's called lacinato. This is the Siberian kale, and it is a large plant. There's the red Russian kale. I grow this often at the garden, and there's a white Russian. So instead of that red stem on it, it has a white stem. And again, these are very, very cold hardy. And if you do these in the spring, the kale goes a long time, even into the warm. It may not taste as sweet once it warms up, but the plant goes on a long time. The lacinato, or the dinosaur kale, that's the one that's used a lot, like in Italian wedding soups and things. There was somebody from, I believe, South Africa at the garden, and she said in South Africa that it's called spinach there. So she kept going to the store looking for spinach, and of course they gave her American spinach. And then she finally saw the dinosaur kale that I had at the food bank garden, and she said, "Oh, spinach." So around the world, all of this stuff is called something a little different. So if you're going to direct sow mustard and turnip greens or leaf lettuce, the best leaf lettuce around here is black seeded Simpson. But if you're going to direct sow those, you just want to loosen the soil up with a little rake or something, and then lightly sprinkle them, and then just put just a little soil on them, or just pat it down. They will find all the little cracks and crevices to go on. A lot of people will mix their little tiny seeds. The seeds on these are very small. So they'll mix these seeds with some sand or something like that, so they can just spread it out. It helps broadcast it more evenly. Or you can just put them into an old spice container. I think this one was a cinnamon container. And then you can sprinkle it out like it was salt. You can sprinkle it out. The rain and stuff will kind of spread the seeds a little bit, and maybe not all of it will come up, but it's easy enough. If you have an area of your greens that don't sprout up, you just take a fork or something and scratch up the surface and re-sprinkle in that spot. If the temperature is right, they generally sprout up very quickly. And again, turnip greens and mustard greens, if you have them really crowded, which is so easy to do, it's just so easy to sprinkle them in there, and it just comes up like grass. It's just massive. I would take the time and, thin that out. You don't have to be gentle with it. Your plants are going to grow. But as long as it's spaced out more, your turnip greens and your mustard green, as long as it's spaced out a little, several inches or so between plants. And if you want the really big leaves, you're going to have to space them out further than that. So the more room that those plants have, the bigger your plants are going to get. Arugula does grow well here. If you haven't grown arugula before, it's a peppery. I wouldn't say bitter, it's just a stronger leaf lettuce. It's quite peppery. So if you wanted just 1 or 2 plants from that, and to supplement your other salad, like if you like a romaine salad or something, you could just pinch off some of those leaves and add them in there for a nice little spice. But there are plenty of recipes for just plain arugula salad. And this one is starting to bolt. So bolting is at the end of the plant life. Most all your vegetables are annual. So at the end of that life, the plant is stressed out. It's signaled to send up flowers, and so they have seeds. So there'll be another plant next year, and that's bolting. So most everything in the Brassica family will bolt and have a yellow flower, yellow clusters of flowers on the top. Arugula is not in that family, so but that has a very pretty little flower on it. And usually once it bolts, any of your plants that bolt, the taste is much more bitter or stronger, which if you like the peppery arugula, then that would be fine. The same thing as your greens. But if you do greens in the spring, and once it gets hot, since these are cool weather plants, they bolt faster. So you would, once you see that bolting, people try to clip that off and keep the plant going, but the taste will not be the same. These are turnip greens, and these are rather crowded in there, which is fine because a lot of people like the little smaller turnip greens. And this is probably after a couple freezes, because you can see some of those that have the brown edges on them. And generally what I do, if I have a lot of clump like that, I just kind of clump up all the leaves together, like what I would call in a ponytail, and then just take some big shears and clip underneath. As long as you don't clip that growing leaf, the growing tip, more of those leaves will come back. So it's a very easy way to harvest if you just clump them all together, snip them off, clump the next group, and snip, snip, snip. You can do that with your mustard greens, with your leaf lettuce, with your turnip greens, and it works very, very well. And also after that, then it's easier if you have it too thin. Once you trim your greens, if you want the bigger greens the next time, the bigger leaves, then it's much easier to thin out once you've harvested something like. So you can see more of the base of the plant, I guess I should say. So this is mustard green. There's several different types of mustard greens. The most common ones around here are Southern Giant, that have these curly little edges on it, and Florida broadleaf. And to me, they sort of taste the same. I'm not a big mustard fan. I think the Southern Giant has more of the horseradish finish on it, and the Florida broadleaf is not as strong. But you can go in there and just pinch off the bigger leaves. So this is spread out quite a bit. If you have it too close together, again, you can bunch it up like a ponytail and snip it. And then when there's more room to see the roots or to see the base of the plant, you can thin it out from there. The Florida broadleaf and this mustard, the plants will get rather large if they have enough room. So depending on the type, if you want the smaller leaves just to add to your salad, or if you want the bigger greens to cook up as mustard greens. But this comment that mustard greens also make a great cover crop. Even if you have to take care of your garden soil in the overwinter, just like it's the main part of your garden is the ground. So you really must take care of the soil itself. If you don't think you're going to grow a crop to eat, or even if you don't like mustard greens, it's pretty cheap to buy a pack of mustard greens. A lot generally come in the pack. Just sprinkle it in the garden and grow the greens, start them like in October or something after your summer garden is completely gone. Makes a great cover crop. It'll have nice long roots to keep the soil aerated. It might attract some beneficial insects. If you don't like to eat it, maybe your neighbors like to eat it. But at the end of the growing season, you want to snip off some of the bigger plants, but then incorporate all of that, like some of the leaves and the roots back in. Mustard greens, if you think of mustard gas from whatever, World War II, mustard greens kill off bad nematodes and encourage the good nematodes in the soil. So the mustard plant itself is very beneficial to the ground. So it's a nice green, what they call green compost. You should work that back in. But the roots and the mustard itself will help eliminate bad bad nematodes and bacteria in the soil and encourage the good growth. So even if you aren't going to eat something or plant something during the fall, at least try to think of your soil and add some sort of compost at that time, or incorporate some leaves from maple trees or something. People generally bag them up in my neighborhood. All I got to do is walk across the street and pick up a bag of leaves and throw it in my garden. So, but try to do something good for your soil if you're not going to have a crop in the fall. You want to at least make sure something's going on there. Plant carrots or plant radishes, even if you don't like them. It helps aerate the soil. So direct sow leaf lettuce, such as the black-seeded Simpson, that one does very well here. And then I've only done down there, I've done soft head lettuce, which is like butter crunch and bib. And they both have done extremely well. And I start them from seeds inside the greenhouse and then pot them up. But this slide is in here repeat to let you know that there are a whole bunch of different lettuce mixes. So right where it says mixed lettuce, that's the black-seeded Simpson. So it's the real light-colored neon. To the right of that looks like some sort of soft-headed lettuce that could be like a bib. The red is it's called red oak leaf lettuce. That's very slow. It's slower to germinate. It's very pretty and tasty, but if you do sow a blend like that, your red oak leaf will be like one of the last to come up. Just don't give up hope on it. It will sprout. This one has lots of different greens in there. And there's also what they call mesclun mix. And that is a big variety of turnip, mustard. It has some spinach in it. There's another one in there called tender green. And if you haven't tried tender green is very, very nice. You can direct sow that. It's a tender green mustard. And it's extreme. It's a cross between a mustard and a spinach. So it's not as strong, but it's a wonderful addition to your salad. And I don't have a picture of it, but if you like something that's a little bit peppery, but not as strong as mustard, I would suggest that you try tender green mustard. Again, I don't know whether they use it more in Chinese stir fries and things like that. It has slightly a pepper taste to it, but it has a very nice texture. You can easily just toss it in your salad just the way it is. So this one, again, was just to say that there's lots of different mixes. If you like those bags of lettuce greens that are a big mix, you might just try, even if you have a large pot, you might just try a mix of that, or your mix of mesclun greens, which is all the stronger greens as opposed to lettuce. All kinds of lettuce does grow here. I've never done iceberg before. I think we're going to try and romaine down at the garden this year. I generally do the leaf lettuce simply because it's very easy to harvest and comes back. You know, and even on the bib lettuce and the butter crunch, if you snip off the head and leave the roots, it will grow again. So if you have it in the ground early and you harvest early, so you harvest the whole head, just snip it off, leave the roots there, because in another couple days the leaves will start growing back up. So you might be able to get 2 heads or 1.5 heads of lettuce from 1 head of bib or 1 head of I'm sure romaine does it too. I've just done it with the butter crunch and the bib. And actually, I think the woodchuck one year came in and ate all my bib, and I left it in there and it all regrew. So you learn things sometimes by the hard way. I have tried numerous different kinds of spinach, and spinach comes in lots of different names, and some of them were very, very pretty little names. Red raspberry spinach, which was a gorgeous little plant, but it did not do well. The one that I've had the most luck with, and spinach does for some reason seem to be harder to germinate. It's another one you should probably soak overnight, but even when I direct sow it, I haven't had as much luck with it. One year I had a great luck with a hybrid one, and I planted it the next year, and I got nothing. But the Bloomsdale right next to it came up. It's called long-standing Bloomsdale, and it's called long-standing because it's very slow to bolt. So in spring, you can use it again in spring. But I've had spinach go, if we've had a light winter, I've had it go all through winter. So it's very good. And like I said, once it gets going, it's easy. And again, it's easy just to go in there and pinch off the outside bigger leaves. So these are some things that have grown in pots. I've grown carrots, and that's lettuce, and that's some in the back there. That's the dwarf kale. That's the dwarf blue Siberian kale. So all of these, if your containers are big enough, but your spinach, you don't need a huge pot to grow that in. And obviously the kale you don't either. So cilantro. Cilantro is the one annual herb that likes it cold. So you can start this from seed. This is just a solo cup. Make sure you label it. Have some holes in the bottom of the cup. You can snip it or punch it. And that's actually called coriander there, but the cilantro seeds are called coriander. Each one of those little balls has 2 seeds inside. And if you crush those, you would find it. So when you plant those and they come up, 2 little seedlings will come up from that. The first year I did it, I thought I must have really done something strange, because I direct sowed seeds into a container like this, and I kept getting 2 little seedlings up. And it was actually somebody from the Middle East that told me that they use a lot of the crushed coriander seeds. If you toast them up and just use the seeds, they have more of a orangey citrusy flavor to them. But if you just use the one little ball, you'll get 2 seedlings like that. And I generally just snip off one of them instead of trying to separate them. If you buy a pack of seeds, you'll probably have at least 20 plants. Cilantro is one of those things that you either like or you don't. It's a genetic tasting. So probably close to 15 or 20% of people in the United States, they actually do the percentage that way by country, but it's 15 to 20% of people in the United States have this genetic disliking to cilantro. And for those people, it just tastes like soap. So if you don't like it, you'll never will. Don't listen to your mother. If you eat this enough, you'll like it. No, you won't. It's just a genetic thing. You'll never learn to like it. But if you like it, it's very easy to grow. This is what the plant looks like. And it grows during the cool weather. A lot of people will try to grow it in warmer weather, but it will bolt quickly in warm weather. So if you're going to do it in warm weather, you need to do it in succession, like start another plant every 2 weeks, because it will bolt that fast. And I think, I don't know, maybe I don't have a picture of it bolting, but it just shoot up a flower straight up from the middle of it. But in warm weather, it bolts very quickly. But I had this in last fall for several months. And you want to continue to harvest your herbs and your cilantro just to encourage the new growth, because the new growth is actually what tastes the best. Garlic. Garlic is one of those things that a lot of people don't think about to plant, but it plants very easily. You just stick it into the ground. You just push 1 clove, not the whole bulb, break your bulb apart and push 1 clove into the ground about 1 to 2 inches deep, 6 to 8 inches apart. It grows all winter. It'll sprout up in the fall and then really get big in the spring. And then when it starts to turn brown in June, that's when you dig it up and you hang it up to dry. So if you get enough sun and you're not going to plant a garden for fall and spring, you can grow garlic for you and for the rest of the year and for the neighbors as well, because 1 little clove will give you a bulb like that. At the garden down at the food bank, I use something called Agribon for just the pest control. It keeps the deer out. It'll keep the rabbit out. It won't keep the woodchuck out, but it does keep the cabbage sloppers out and the cabbage moth. They haven't figured out a way to get underneath that. And this does work well with a lot of your greens, because this doesn't shade them or anything, but it keeps them just a little bit protected. They actually grow faster underneath this. And so you get a taller plant with it. The only thing you can't grow really underneath that well is broccoli. It gets too tall and it doesn't stay strong enough. But there's all kinds of different row covers. This one I just happened to find online and bought it. There's tons and tons of different kinds of row covers to keep that cabbage slopper off if you don't want to spray. So that's it. That's happy gardening.
Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome. You can also just email me or come by the food bank garden some morning to look around. You can email me at kbishop@chatfoodbank.org.
Well, Katie, that was really awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with all of us. And you were just saying how you feel like you could use a break. So I appreciate you getting in one more presentation. And
no problem. This one's easy for me.
Yeah, right? It's not work if it's something you love.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
This is almost like our pilot season, honestly. For a TV show, this is our pilot season this month. And if it goes well and if we, get more people reciprocating and jumping in, then we're going to be super happy to continue this on for the months. But I'm really grateful again for Katie, for you coming out here and being, as you said, our guinea pig, our first presentation of the month of September. I can't believe we're in September already, but yeah, that's kind of what we got every Wednesday at noon. Encourage people to join and share this link on your Facebooks if you enjoyed it. And, we hope to see you guys back every Wednesday and kind of get a little virtual community going with our master gardeners partnering together.